I was getting ready for Sunday dinner at my son's house when my lawyer sent me a text. "Call me now. Do not go there." What he discovered about my daughter-in-laws and my son's plan changed everything, forever. I had woken up early that Sunday, nervous as a teenager on prom night, because Ryan, my only son, had invited me to dinner. We hadn't spent time together in weeks where every call from me ended with, "I'll call you back, Mom, I'm busy." But that Sunday was different. He had insisted, "Mom, come over. Victoria made your favorite lasagna." I had smiled when I hung up. Maybe things were finally getting better between us. I was in front of the mirror, putting on the silver earrings my late husband, Arthur, gave me 30 years ago when my cell phone vibrated on the dresser. It was a message from Mr. Cole, my lawyer. Just 2 words in all caps. "Call. Urgently." My heart sank. Gregory Cole never wrote like that. He was a calm, methodical man, the kind who weighed every word before speaking. I'd known him for 15 years, ever since he helped me with my husband's will. I dialed with trembling hands. "Eleanor, thank God you answered." His voice sounded agitated, something I had never heard in him. "Where are you?" "At home, Gregory. I'm getting ready to go to Ryan's and—" "Don't go. Please, listen to me carefully. Do not go to that house." "What are you talking about?" "It's dinner with my son. He invited me himself." "Eleanor, I found something very serious. I need you to come to my office right now. Or if you prefer, I'll come to your house." My breathing grew heavy. Outside, the afternoon sun streamed through the window, but I suddenly felt cold. "Gregory, you're scaring me. What's going on?" There was a silence. A silence that lasted only seconds but felt like an eternity. "Your house, Eleanor. It's not yours anymore." My legs gave out. I had to sit on the edge of the bed. "How is it not mine?" "Of course it's mine. I bought it with my own money. I worked 30 years for. You signed a total transfer of property 6 months ago. Your son is the legal owner now. And there's more, much more. But I can't tell you over the phone. Eleanor, this is very serious." The world stopped. My house. The house I built with textiles, with my tired hands, with the late nights in front of the sewing machine after my husband died. The house where I raised Ryan, where the photographs of my entire life are. "I'm on my way," I whispered. "Give me 20 minutes." I hung up. I sat there, looking at the blue dress tossed on the floor. And then I understood something that chilled my blood. That dinner wasn't a reconciliation. It was a trap. If something in this story makes your chest tighten, stay until the end. Because what I discovered that afternoon didn't just take my house. It took my faith in my own blood. Like, subscribe, and join me in this story. Because I need someone else to know what I lived through. While I was driving to Mr. Cole's office, tears started to blur my vision. I had to stop at a red light and take a deep breath, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. People passed by me, laughing, walking calmly, oblivious to the fact that my world had just collapsed. How had I gotten here? My mind flew backward, to the darkest days of my life. 12 years ago, when my husband Arthur died of a sudden heart attack, I was left alone with $4,300 in the bank and rent due in 2 months. Ryan had just started college. He was 20 years old with his whole life ahead of him. I was 56, with no pension and a hollowness in my chest that seemed to swallow everything. But I didn't give myself the luxury of falling apart. I locked myself in the living room of our old rented house and pulled out the old sewing machine my mother had left me. That black Singer machine, heavy as an anchor, that I'd had with me since I was a girl. I cleaned it, oiled every part, and stitched my first quilt. I sold it at the local craft market for $30. $30 that turned into $60, then $200, then $500 a week. I made napkins, table runners, traditional blouses, pillow covers with folk art flowers, New England lighthouses. Each stitch carried my pain, my anger, my need to survive. I worked from 6 in the morning to 11 at night. My fingers bled, my eyes burned under the yellow light of the bulb, but I didn't stop. Ryan would see me working and sometimes say, "Mom, rest, it's already very late." I'd smile at him, thread between my teeth, and answer, "Son, this is so you can get your degree, so you won't lack for anything." 5 years later, I opened my own studio, a small shop in Beacon Hill, with 3 employees who helped me. My textiles started selling in boutique shops. Tourists paid up to $250 for a single wall hanging. My hands, those wrinkled and calloused hands, were building a future. And then, the most important day of my life arrived. I was 63 when I signed the deed to this house. My house. A small 2-story place in Brookline with a little garden out front and a terrace where I could watch the sunsets. It cost $560,000. I paid in cash. Every bill represented a sunrise in front of the machine, an order fulfilled, a yes from a satisfied client. The closing attorney handed me the keys, and I cried like I had never cried before. I called Ryan that afternoon. He had already graduated as an industrial engineer. He was working at an international company. Earning good money? I told him. Son, we have our own house. We'll never have to depend on anyone again. He came that night, carrying a bottle of sparkling cider. We toasted in the empty living room, sitting on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet. He hugged me tight and said, "Mom, you're the strongest woman I know." I treasured those words like a jewel. Besides the house, I managed to save $84,700. I had it in a certificate of deposit. It was my cushion, my security, my dignified retirement. I planned to leave everything to Ryan one day, but as an inheritance, not as a handout. As the fruit of a life well lived, not as stolen goods. I parked in front of the building where Mr. Cole's office was. I turned off the engine. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were swollen, my mascara was running, my hair was a mess. But there was something else in my reflection. There was fear. Fear of confirming that everything I had fought for, everything I had built with blood and sleepless nights, had been snatched away by the 2 people I trusted most in this world. I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and got out of the car. Because if I had learned anything in this life, it was this. The hardest battles aren't fought against strangers. They're fought against those you believed would never betray you. Mr. Cole received me in his office with an expression I had never seen on him, worry mixed with contained rage. He poured me a glass of water and waited for me to sit down before opening a beige folder full of documents. But before we get to that, I need to tell you how it all started. How a woman I didn't know entered our lives and, without me realizing it, began to destroy everything from within. 3 years ago, Ryan came to my house on a Saturday afternoon with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. He was holding the hand of a slender woman with straight, dark hair, impeccably dressed in a pearl-colored pantsuit, sky-high heels, a designer bag, an expensive perfume that flooded my living room as soon as she entered. "Mom, this is Victoria," my son said, with that excited voice of someone introducing someone important. "She has a degree in business administration, works at a financial consulting firm." Victoria extended her hand. She didn't hug me. She didn't smile warmly. Just a polite, measured, cold smile. "Mrs. Croft, a pleasure to meet you. Ryan has told me so much about you." I liked her at first. Or maybe I forced myself to like her because I saw my son was happy. I hadn't seen him like that in years. Since his last girlfriend had left him, Ryan had become more serious, more absorbed in his work. Victoria seemed successful, intelligent, the kind of woman who knows what she wants. I thought, how nice that my son found someone like that, someone who will push him to grow. I didn't know that what she wanted was exactly what I had built. The first few months were normal. They came to visit me on Sundays. Victoria always brought desserts from some expensive French bakery, the kind that cost $18 a slice. I offered my homemade coffee cake, my fresh-baked muffins, but she'd barely take a bite and leave it on the plate. "I'm watching my figure, Eleanor," she'd say with that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But it looks delicious." And then the comments started. Subtle, wrapped in kind words, but comments nonetheless. One day, while we were having coffee in my living room, Victoria looked around and said, "Eleanor, this house has so much potential. With a remodel, it could be worth double. That vintage furniture is nice, but if you changed it for something more modern, minimalist, just imagine the change." I smiled uncomfortably. I like them this way. Every piece of furniture has its story. Of course," she replied, touching her perfectly straightened hair. "It's just, Well, sometimes holding on to the past stops us from growing, don't you think? Ryan said nothing. He just drank his coffee in silence. Another Sunday, while I was making beef stew in the kitchen, Victoria came in and leaned on the counter. Eleanor, do you have a structured retirement plan? Because at your age, you should be thinking about safer investments, about diversifying your assets. I have my savings, I replied, stirring the pot, and my business still provides a good living. Ah, yes, the embroidery studio, she said, with a tone I didn't like. It's very artisanal. But tell me, have you thought about what will happen when you can't work anymore? When your hands don't respond like they used to? I felt a lump in my throat, because it was a question I had asked myself during sleepless nights. But hearing it from her, said so coldly, so calculatingly, it hurt. That's why I save, I said firmly. And that's why I have this house. It's my security. Victoria nodded slowly, as if taking a mental note of something. Of course. But you know what would be smarter? Putting this house in Ryan's name now. That way when the time comes, there won't be any legal problems or inheritance taxes to pay. Everything stays in the family, protected. Something inside me bristled, but I said nothing. Ryan still didn't intervene. The next month, they announced they were getting married. I organized a small gathering at my house to celebrate. I invited my friends from the studio, some neighbors, family. Victoria arrived late, looking annoyed, and barely touched the food I had prepared with so much love. It's just that I'm not used to food that's so rich, she told me in a low voice while Ryan talked to a cousin. I swallowed my pride and smiled. The wedding was in an elegant ballroom that they paid for. I had no say in anything, not the menu, not the music, not the guest list. It's their day, Victoria reminded me, and I, as the mother, had to respect their decisions. I sat at that wedding feeling like just another guest, not the mother of the groom, and after their honeymoon in Europe, something changed permanently. The visits became scarcer. Ryan was always busy. Victoria always had a meeting, a commitment, or was tired. When I called, he answered in monosyllables. When I suggested getting together, he postponed. And when they finally came, Victoria dominated the entire conversation. She talked about her achievements, her projects, her investments. She looked at my house like someone evaluating a property to buy and demolish. One night, alone in my room, I wondered if I was exaggerating, if it was all in my head. If the problem was that I couldn't accept that my son had his own life. But something in my heart told me no, that there was something darker growing behind those cold smiles and comments disguised as advice. And I was right. But when I finally found out, it was already too late. Mr. Cole placed the first document in front of me. It was a public deed. I recognized my signature at the bottom of the page. My hands started to tremble. Before I explain this, Gregory said in a grave voice, I need you to tell me exactly how you came to sign this paper. I closed my eyes, and I went back to that day. 6 months ago, on a Tuesday afternoon, Ryan had called me that morning, which was unusual because he almost never called during the week. Mom, can you come over for lunch? Victoria and I need to talk to you about something important. The tone was serious. My heart raced. I thought about illness, problems, bad news. The entire way to their apartment in Back Bay, I prayed silently. When I arrived, Victoria greeted me with a smile that seemed too wide, too rehearsed. She had set the table with salmon, salad, and white wine. All very elegant, very impersonal. Nothing I really enjoyed. But I ate in silence, waiting for them to tell me what was wrong. After dessert, Ryan and Victoria exchanged a look. He cleared his throat. Mom, we've been thinking a lot about your future, Ryan began. About your security. My security? I repeated, confused. Victoria leaned forward, with that expression of concern that I now know was completely fake. Eleanor, Ryan, and I have been doing some research. Did you know that when a person passes away and leaves real estate, the heirs have to pay enormous taxes? We're talking about up to 35% of the property's value. I froze. 35%? I whispered. That's right, she continued, pulling out a folder with printed papers, graphs, numbers highlighted in yellow. Your house is valued at over $800,000. That means Ryan would have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars just in inheritance taxes. And if he doesn't pay on time, the government could seize the property. My son took my hand. That hand I had held when he learned to walk, when he had his first fall, when his heart was broken for the first time. Mom, we don't want you to lose your house. We don't want all your effort to go to the government. That's why we looked into legal options. What options? I asked, my voice breaking. Victoria slid more papers toward me. There were words I didn't understand. Transfer of rights. Anticipated wealth transfer. Tax protection. The solution is simple and completely legal, she explained in a soft, almost maternal voice. You do a transfer of the property to Ryan's name now, while you're alive. That way, there are no taxes to pay. The house is protected. And you, of course, keep living there just as you always have. Nothing changes for you. It's just a piece of paper, a formality with the attorney to protect your assets. But I wouldn't be the owner anymore? I asked, feeling my mouth go dry. On paper, yes, Ryan answered quickly. But in practice, no. It would still be your house, Mom. It's your home. No one is going to kick you out. This is just to protect you from the government's predatory taxes. Victoria added, urgently. And believe me, Eleanor, we've seen terrible cases. Elderly people who lose their homes because their children can't pay the taxes. Families destroyed. Fortunes lost. We don't want that to happen to you. They showed me articles printed from the internet. Stories of families who had lost everything. Red numbers, warnings, alarming headlines. I was dizzy, confused, scared. But isn't there another way? A will? Wills don't avoid taxes, Mom, Ryan interrupted. In fact, they complicate things more. This is the safest way. Besides, I already spoke to a closing attorney. It's all set. We just need your signature. You already spoke to an attorney? I repeated, feeling an alarm in my chest. To speed up the process, Victoria explained. These things can take months, but if you sign this week, we're protected. Your house is protected. Ryan squeezed my hand. Mom, trust me. This is what's best for you, for everyone. And that was my mistake. My monumental error. I trusted. I trusted because he was my son, because I thought no one in the world would protect me better than him, because I assumed his love for me was unbreakable. 2 days later, I signed at the attorney's office. The man read the documents quickly. He pointed to where I should sign, and I obeyed like an automaton. Victoria and Ryan were there, smiling, calm. The attorney gave me a copy of the papers and said, "Congratulations. You have performed an act of great love and foresight." I left there feeling a strange emptiness in my stomach. But I convinced myself I had done the right thing. I put the papers in a drawer and tried not to think about it again. Until that Sunday. Until that text from Mr. Cole. I opened my eyes and looked at him. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched on the desk. "Eleanor," he said hoarsely, "what you signed wasn't a protection. It was a total, absolute, and irrevocable transfer of property. Your house no longer belongs to you. Ryan is the sole legal owner, and if he wanted to sell it, kick you out, or mortgage it, he can do it without your consent." The words fell on me like stones. But he told me. He promised me. "They lied to you," Gregory stated. "And there's more." He pulled out another document, a bank statement. 3 months ago, Ryan applied for a home equity loan using your house as collateral, $190,000. They already have it in their account. The world stopped spinning. What? They're putting your property in debt, Eleanor. And if they don't pay, the bank takes it. But that's not all. Gregory took out his phone. He showed me screenshots of a text conversation. A contact at the attorney's office passed this to me. "These are messages between Victoria and a friend of hers," I read. And with every word, I felt my soul breaking apart. "We're almost rid of the burden. The old woman signed everything. Now we just have to get her out of the house and remodel. Ryan says we should send her to a state facility. She's served her purpose. What if she resists? She won't. She's alone. She has no one else. And even if she wanted to fight, She has no legal standing. The house is ours. I dropped the phone on the desk. Tears flowed uncontrollably, burning my cheeks, choking my voice. My son, my only son, the child I carried in my womb, the one I fed when I didn't even have enough for myself, the one I dressed in clothes I sewed in the dead of night, the one I educated, protected, loved with every fiber of my being. He had sold me out for $190,000. I don't know how long I cried in that office. Mr. Cole brought me a chamomile tea that I couldn't drink. My hands were shaking so much the liquid spilled onto my legs. He waited in silence, giving me the space I needed to process the unthinkable. When I could finally speak, my voice came out broken, unrecognizable. "How did you find all this?" Gregory leaned back in his chair and sighed deeply. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a colleague at the Public Registry of Deeds. He asked if I was still your lawyer. I said yes. Then he told me he had seen strange movements on your deed. A total transfer followed almost immediately by a home equity loan application. That seemed suspicious to him. "Why suspicious?" I asked, wiping my tears. Because normally, when someone does a transfer for asset protection, they don't immediately mortgage the property. That contradicts the supposed purpose of protecting the asset. My colleague smelled a rat and notified me. Gregory opened another folder. I started investigating. I requested copies of all the documents. I reviewed the loan agreement, and then I discovered the loan wasn't requested to improve the property or for any medical emergency. It was a cash-out loan, meaning that money can be used for whatever they want. For whatever they want? I repeated, feeling nauseous. That's right. It could be to buy a car, go on vacation, invest in another business, anything. And you, Eleanor, even though you're no longer the legal owner, are listed as a moral guarantor. If they don't pay, the bank forecloses and auctions the house. You lose your home, and they keep the money. I felt the room spin. How could I be so stupid? I moaned, covering my face with my hands. How did I not see it? You weren't stupid, Gregory said firmly. You were manipulated. They used your love, your trust, and your fear against you. That's not stupidity, Eleanor. That's abuse. The word hung in the air. Abuse. My own son was abusing me. But there's more, the lawyer continued, and I thought nothing could be worse. I hired a private investigator just to be sure, and he found this. He showed me more screenshots, this time of a conversation between Ryan and a real estate agent. How much can we list the house for? In that area, with those features, we can ask $850,000. It'll sell fast. Perfect. But I need to get the current tenant out first. Do you know any lawyers who handle quick evictions? Sure. I'll send you contacts. With the right money, you'll have her out in 3 months. My son was calling me a tenant. As if I were a stranger. As if I hadn't given 30 years of my life to build that home. Eleanor, listen to me carefully, Gregory said, leaning forward. They plan to kick you out of your own house, sell it, and keep the loan money plus the money from the sale. We're talking about a total of over $800,000, and they would leave you on the street. It can't be legal, I whispered. There has to be something, some law that protects me. Legally, you signed a voluntary transfer. Before a judge, that's valid. They can argue it was your free choice. And without proof that there was deceit or coercion, it's very difficult to reverse it. Very difficult or impossible? Gregory held my gaze. Difficult, but not impossible. If we can prove there was fraud, duress, or exploitation of your vulnerability as a senior, we can fight. But we need solid proof. And most of all, we need them to make a mistake. What kind of mistake? That they say or do something that proves their true intention. That they get cocky. That they reveal their plan openly. I fell silent, processing everything. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken. The Sunday that had started with such hope had turned into the worst nightmare of my life. And the dinner, I asked suddenly. Why did they invite me today, specifically? Gregory pulled out one last document. Because tomorrow, Monday, is the deadline for you to sign away any rights of tenancy or residence on the property. It's the last paper they need to have absolute control. If you don't sign it, They could start a long legal process. But if you sign it, it's over. They can legally evict you at any time. Now, it all made sense. The sudden invitation after weeks of silence, the favorite lasagna, the smiles. It was all part of a plan to soften me up, so I would arrive trusting, happy, unsuspecting. And after dessert, they would pull out some little papers for me to sign without reading, thinking they were family photos or mementos. "But you warned me in time," I said, looking at Gregory with infinite gratitude. "You saved me from signing that." "For now," he replied. "But Eleanor, they aren't going to give up. When you don't show up today, when you don't sign tomorrow, they're going to pressure you, they're going to look for you, they're going to try to convince you in every way possible." "What do I do then?" I asked, feeling small, vulnerable, broken. Gregory clasped his hands on the desk. "You have two options. The first, accept what happened. Negotiate some agreement where they let you live in the house until you die, and pray they keep their word. The second," he paused, "is to fight, gather evidence, record them if necessary, prove they deceived you, and take back what's yours. Do I have a real chance of winning? If you do exactly what I say, if you are brave and strategic, yes. There are federal laws protecting seniors from financial exploitation. If we prove there was manipulation and abuse, we can nullify the transfer. But it won't be easy, and you'll have to face your own son in a courtroom." The tears welled up again. But this time they were different. They weren't just tears of pain. There was something else, something starting to grow in my chest like a hot ember. Rage. I lifted my head and looked Gregory in the eyes. "I want to fight, I want to get my house back, and I want them to pay for what they did." He nodded slowly, with a faint smile. "Then get ready, Eleanor, because what's coming won't be pretty. But I promise you, you won't be alone." I left that office when it was already dark. My phone was full of missed calls from Ryan and texts from Victoria. "Mom, where are you? It's late. Did something happen to you? Please answer. We're worried. The dinner is getting cold." I didn't answer any of them. I drove back to my house that wasn't mine anymore, and I sat in the dark living room looking at the photographs on the walls. Ryan as a baby. Ryan at his graduation. Ryan hugging me the day I bought this house. At what point had that boy turned into a stranger capable of betraying me like this? And more importantly, at what point had I forgotten that I am a woman who does not give up? That night, something changed inside me. The pain was still there, but now it was accompanied by something stronger: determination. I spent all night awake, sitting up in my bed, my back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling as the hours crawled by with unbearable slowness. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls, texts. Every vibration was like a stab in the gut. At 2 a.m, Ryan left a voicemail. His tone had changed. He no longer sounded worried. He sounded annoyed. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You're not answering the phone. You stood us up. You made us look bad. At least have the decency to explain what happened. Call me first thing tomorrow." I deleted the message before it finished. On Monday morning, Mr. Cole called me. "Eleanor, how are you this morning?" "I didn't sleep," I answered in a hoarse voice. "I figured. Listen, I have a plan. But I need you to trust me and do exactly what I'm about to ask. Tell me. I want you to go to that dinner." I sat up straight in bed. "What? Are you crazy?" "I'm not. Listen to me," he interrupted calmly. "We need proof. We need them to reveal their intentions. And the best way to get it is for you to go. Pretend you know nothing, and let them talk. Take your phone with the recorder on in your purse. Record everything. Every word, every gesture, every comment. Gregory, I can't. I can't sit across from them and act like. I know it's hard, but it's the only way. If we don't have concrete proof of their plan, it will be your word against theirs. And before a judge, they can argue everything was legal and transparent. We need them to hang themselves." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. What if I can't? What if I break down right there? "You won't break down," Gregory said firmly, "because you're stronger than you think, and because you've survived worse things than an uncomfortable dinner. Think of this as a performance. the most important performance of your life. That afternoon, I called Ryan back. I put on my best apologetic mother voice. Son, forgive me. I felt sick on Sunday. I think it was something I ate. I had to rush home, and I fell asleep. I just saw all your calls. There was a silence on the other end. Then, his voice, colder than usual. You were sick all this time and couldn't send one text? I'm sorry, honey. I didn't want to worry you. Can we have dinner tonight? Let me make it up to you. I heard Victoria talking in the background. Then Ryan replied, We can't tonight, but tomorrow, yes. Does 8 o'clock work for you? Perfect, I'll be there. I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. Mr. Cole had given me precise instructions. Activate the voice recorder, put it in my purse, leave it nearby during the entire dinner. Tuesday came all too quickly. I dressed in a wine-colored sweater and black pants. Nothing fancy. I didn't want them to think it was a special occasion for me. I grabbed my brown leather purse. I checked 3 times that the recorder was active and drove to Back Bay with my stomach in knots. When I arrived at their building, the doorman greeted me with a smile. I just nodded. I rode the elevator up to the 12th floor. Every second felt eternal. I rang the bell. Victoria opened the door. She was wearing a tight black dress, and her hair was up in a perfect bun. She looked me up and down before smiling. Eleanor, so glad you're feeling better. Come in. I entered. The apartment smelled of expensive perfume and lavender-scented candles. Everything was impeccably neat. Not a speck of dust. Not one object out of place. It was a cold, soulless space, like a magazine showroom. Ryan came out of the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. He gave me a kiss on the cheek, but it was mechanical. No warmth. Hi, Mom. Sit down. Dinner is almost ready. I sat at the glass dining table. I placed my purse on the empty chair next to me, making sure the microphone was exposed. Victoria poured wine. I barely touched it. Ryan brought the plates. Risotto with mushrooms. Nothing like the lasagna they had supposedly prepared on Sunday. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. I could feel their eyes on me, evaluating me, measuring my every move. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. Eleanor, we wanted to talk to you about something important. Here it came. Yes? I asked, feigning innocence. Ryan put his fork down on his plate. Mom, Victoria and I have been thinking. Now that the house is in my name, it would be good for us to make some adjustments. Adjustments? I repeated. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. What Ryan means is that the house has a lot of wasted potential. With a good remodel, it could become an excellent investment. We could even rent it out and generate passive income. I felt my stomach clench, but I kept my face neutral. Rent my house? Well, technically, it's not your house anymore, Eleanor, Victoria said in that soft, almost maternal voice. It's Ryan's, and he has the right to make decisions about his property, don't you think? My son said nothing. He just stared at his plate. Besides, Victoria continued, you live alone in a 2-story house. That's not practical at your age. The stairs are dangerous. The upkeep is expensive. Wouldn't you be better off in a place that's more appropriate? Appropriate? I asked, feeling the rage begin to climb up my throat. A smaller place. More manageable, she explained, as if talking to a child. There are very nice retirement communities for seniors, with nurses, activities, people your age. You'd be more comfortable. Are you telling me to leave my house? The words came out harsher than I intended. Ryan finally looked up. Mom, don't look at it that way. It's for your own good. You're not at an age to be living alone anymore. What if you fall? If you get sick? You need to be in a place where they can take care of you. I take care of myself, I answered, clenching my fists under the table. I've lived alone for 12 years, and I've never needed anyone. But things change, Eleanor, Victoria interrupted. You're 68 years old now. You have to be realistic. And frankly, maintaining that house is an unnecessary expense when Ryan and I could be investing that money in our future, in our family's future. That last phrase hung in the air like poison. Your family? I repeated slowly. And what am I? Victoria blinked, realizing her mistake, but she covered it quickly. Of course your family, Eleanor, but you have to understand that Ryan and I are building our own life, and that house represents capital that we need. Capital, I repeated, feeling tears start to sting my eyes. My house is capital to you. Ryan sighed with impatience. Mom, don't be dramatic. We're trying to resolve this in the best way possible. Look, we already did the research. There's a state-run facility that's accepting applications. It's government-run, but it's decent. 3 meals a day, a doctor on staff. A state facility? The words came out like a choked sob. At that moment, Victoria's cell phone rang. She picked it up and got up from the table. Excuse me, this is important. I have to take this. She walked out onto the balcony, closing the glass door behind her. But not completely. It was left slightly ajar. Ryan and I were left alone. He wouldn't look at me. He played with his fork, pushing the rice from one side of the plate to the other. That easy? I asked him, my voice trembling. That easy? You just get rid of me? It's not that, Mom. It's just… What, Ryan? What is it? He raised his voice for the first time. I need that money, okay? Victoria and I have plans. We want to buy a place on Cape Cod, build our own house. But we can't do that if all your equity is tied up in that old house that you don't even use completely. I was breathless. That old house is what I built for you, I whispered. Every brick, every window, every square foot was with the thought of leaving you something, of you having a safety net. And I appreciate that, Mom. But I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 32 years old, and I need to make my own decisions. From the balcony, I heard Victoria's voice on the phone. She was speaking loudly enough for her words to reach the dining room. Yeah, we're almost rid of the problem. We're sending her to a state home, can you believe it? But at least we'll get our investment back. No, it wasn't hard. The old woman is docile, believes everything we say. 3 months, max, and the house is ours to sell. The world stopped. I looked at my son. He had heard every single word, and he did nothing. He didn't get up to defend me. He didn't yell at his wife. He didn't say, "Don't talk about my mother that way." He just kept pushing the rice around on his plate. And in that moment, something inside me died. It wasn't my love for him. That, as painful as it was still there. What died was my illusion, the image I had of my son, the idea that I mattered to him, even a little bit. I got up from the chair slowly. I grabbed my purse. Ryan finally looked at me. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I walked to the door. Victoria came back from the balcony with a smile. Leaving already, Eleanor? But we haven't finished. We're finished, I said, with a voice I didn't recognize as my own. We're finished with everything. I opened the door and walked out. Behind me, I heard Ryan say, "Let her go. She'll sign. She has nowhere else to go." I went down in the elevator, my legs shaking. I got to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. And there, finally, I exploded. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's death. I cried for the betrayal, for the humiliation, for the son I had lost without even realizing it. But when the tears dried, when the sobbing turned to hiccups, and the hiccups to silence, I took out my phone. I stopped the recording. 2 hours and 14 minutes of audio. Every word, every plan, every insult disguised as concern. I sent the file to Gregory with a single message. I have what we need. Now tell me how we destroy them. I got home after 11 at night. The streetlights flickered faintly, casting long shadows over the garden I had planted myself years ago. Roses, jasmine, bougainvillea. Every plant had its story, its moment, its reason for being. I went inside and locked the door. I stood in the entryway, looking at my living room. The furniture Victoria called vintage with contempt. The photographs on the walls documenting an entire life. The hand-woven rug a grateful client had given me. The ceramic lamp I bought in Santa Fe when Arthur was still alive. This was my house, my refuge, my testament that a single, widowed woman could pick herself up off the floor and build something worthy. And they wanted to rip it away from me like it was a disposable object. I sat on the sofa, in the dark, with my purse still hanging from my shoulder. The silence of the house was so deep I could hear my own ragged breathing. For years, I had defined myself through my son. I was Ryan's mom. My reason for existing was his well-being, his success, his happiness, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped so he wouldn't go without. It all made sense because it was for him. But who was I without that role? Who was Eleanor when she was no longer just mom? The answer came like a whisper from deep within me. I was a survivor. A woman who had buried her husband and refused to be buried with him. A woman who turned pain into stitches of embroidery and stitches into a business. A woman who learned to negotiate with suppliers, to calculate costs, to defend her prices when customers wanted to pay less than what was fair. I was a warrior. I always had been. I had just forgotten to put on my armor. My phone vibrated. It was Gregory. Eleanor. I heard the entire audio. It's pure gold. This is enough to prove fraud, manipulation, and financial exploitation. Are you ready for war? My fingers trembled on the keyboard, but I typed with a clarity that surprised me. I'm ready. Tell me what to do. His reply came in seconds. Be at my office first thing tomorrow. We're going to prepare a lawsuit that will shake the foundations of their perfect world. And Eleanor, I'm going to ask difficult things of you. You'll have to pretend to be weak when you're strong. You'll have to act like a victim when you're the hunter. Can you do that? I smiled in the darkness, a bitter smile, but a smile nonetheless. I can do whatever it takes. That night, something strange happened. After so much crying, so much pain, so much humiliation, I slept deeply. I slept like I hadn't in months. And I dreamed. I dreamed of my mother. She had died when I was just 23, but in the dream, she was there, sitting at her sewing machine, with that serious, determined expression I remembered so well. Daughter, she said, without looking up from her stitching, do you remember what I taught you? What, Mom? That women like us don't break. We bend, yes. The wind shakes us, life hits us, but we don't break. Because we're made of the same stuff as cacti. Spiky on the outside, tough on the inside, and capable of blooming even in the desert. I woke up with wet cheeks, but not from sadness this time. It was something different, something that felt like both a farewell and a welcome. I got up, took a long shower, and dressed carefully. Black pants, a white blouse, my gray wool cardigan. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman ready to fight. At 9 in the morning, I was in Gregory's office. He already had everything prepared. Folders, documents, his computer on with the audio transcribed word for word. Good morning, Eleanor, he greeted me, studying my face. You look different. I feel different, I replied, sitting across from his desk. Tell me what I have to do. Gregory clasped his hands and leaned forward. First, we need to understand what we're up against. They have the law on their side on paper. You signed voluntarily. But we have something more powerful. The truth and proof that your signature was obtained through deceit. What laws protect us? The federal laws protecting the rights of senior citizens, specifically the statute that penalizes financial exploitation. We can also invoke procedural fraud and abuse of trust. But this won't be quick, Eleanor. It could take months. I don't care about the time, I said firmly. I care about winning. Good. Then this is what we're going to do. Gregory laid out a detailed plan. First, we'll file a lawsuit to nullify the transfer of property based on fraud and material error. We'll attach the audio as the primary evidence, plus a psychological evaluation demonstrating you were emotionally manipulated. Second, we'll request a preliminary injunction to freeze any transactions on the property while the lawsuit is pending. That will stop Ryan from selling it before the case is resolved. Third, we'll file a criminal complaint for fraud and financial exploitation of the elderly, which is a federal crime with penalties of up to 8 years in prison. Prison? I repeated, feeling a chill. If the crime is proven, yes. But Eleanor, I have to ask you directly, are you willing to have your son face criminal charges? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. I closed my eyes. I saw the 5-year-old boy who cried when he fell, the teenager who hugged me when I cried for his father, the young man who had told me, "You're the strongest woman I know." But I also saw the man who called me tenant, who allowed his wife to call me a burden, and an old woman who planned to lock me in a state facility to steal my assets. I opened my eyes. I am willing to do whatever is necessary to get my dignity back. Gregory nodded slowly. Then there's one more thing you need to do. For this plan to work, we need them to feel confident, to believe they've won. I want you to call them, act defeated, and tell them you're willing to negotiate. Negotiate? Pretend you'll agree to leave the house in exchange for a small monthly payment. Tell them you just want to keep the peace, that you don't want trouble. The more confident they are, the more mistakes they'll make, and we'll be documenting everything. You want me to humiliate myself more? I want you to play chess, Eleanor. Sometimes, to get a checkmate, you have to sacrifice pieces first. Do you trust me? I looked at him steadily. This man had warned me in time. He had believed me when everyone else would have thought I was just a paranoid old woman. He was offering me his years of experience and his network without asking for anything in return but justice. I trust you. Perfect. Then call him now. On speakerphone. I want to listen. I took out my phone with trembling hands. I dialed Ryan's number. It rang 3 times before he answered. Mom? His voice sounded surprised. Son, I said, putting all the weariness I truly felt into my voice. I need to talk to you. About last night. Oh yeah. Look, I think you were being overly dramatic. We were just… You're right, I interrupted. You're right, Ryan. I was being dramatic. I'm old, I'm tired, and maybe you're right. Maybe I do need a smaller place, something more manageable. There was a silence on the other end. Then, really? Really? But I want to ask you for something. Please don't send me to a state facility. Let me find a small apartment I can rent, and give me a monthly stipend for expenses. Not much. Just enough to live with dignity. I heard Victoria talking in the background, though I couldn't make out what she was saying. Then Ryan replied, How much would you need? About $600 a month. For rent, food, basic expenses. Okay, he said, far too quickly, far too relieved. We can do that, but I need you to sign the papers I was going to give you yesterday. The ones waiving your tenancy rights. When can we meet? Give me a few days to process all this. To say goodbye to the house. How about Friday? Friday. Perfect. I'll send you the address for the attorney's office. And Mom, thanks for being reasonable. I hung up before I threw up from disgust. Mr. Cole had a satisfied smile. Perfect. You just handed them the rope they're going to hang themselves with. On Friday, when they arrive at the attorney's office, we'll be waiting for them with a court order and 2 police officers. 2 police officers? In case they try anything. Financial exploitation of the elderly is a serious crime, and with that audio, we have probable cause for an arrest. I leaned back in the chair, exhausted, but strangely at peace. Gregory, do you really think we can win? He held my gaze with an intensity I hadn't seen before. Eleanor, we're not just going to win. We're going to make them regret every single day they underestimated a woman who stitched her freedom with her own 2 hands. And so began my transformation from victim to hunter. Because the biggest mistake predators make is believing their prey doesn't have claws. The days between that Wednesday and Friday were the longest of my life. Every minute stretched like gum, heavy and dense. But Mr. Cole had given me very clear instructions. Act normal, don't raise suspicion, and above all, keep recording every interaction with Ryan and Victoria. On Thursday afternoon, Victoria called me. Her voice was sweet, almost maternal, the kind of sweetness snakes use before they bite. Eleanor, how are you? Ryan told me about your conversation. I want you to know you made a very wise decision. I pressed the phone to my ear, the recorder activated. Thank you, Victoria. I guess you're right. I'm not at an age to maintain such a big house anymore. Exactly. And look, I want you to know we're not bad people. The $600 a month are guaranteed. It's only fair, right? You give us the house, we take care of you. You give us the house. As if it were a fair exchange. As if 30 years of my life were worth $600 a month. Yes, it's fair, I lied, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Perfect. Then, Tomorrow at 11 at the attorney's office, everything is ready. You just have to sign, and that's it. Everyone's happy. Oh, and Eleanor. Yes? There's no need for you to bring a lawyer or anything. It's a simple formality. Just family, right? Trust is the most important thing. I smiled bitterly. Of course, Victoria. Just family. When I hung up, I sent the audio to Mr. Cole with a message. They're already celebrating. His response was immediate. Let them. Let them get drunk on confidence. Tomorrow will be their rudest awakening. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. It was like Christmas Eve when I was a child, but instead of waiting for gifts, I was waiting for justice. I got up at 5 in the morning. I showered calmly, letting the hot water relax my tense muscles. I dressed in my best outfit, a beige pantsuit I had bought for Ryan's graduation but never wore. I put on light makeup. I wore the pearl earrings Arthur gave me on our 20th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I didn't fully recognize. It was still me, but there was something different in my eyes. Something hard, something shining with determination. At 9 in the morning, I arrived at Mr. Cole's office. But this time, we weren't alone. There were 3 other people waiting. Eleanor, I'd like you to meet Javier Montoya, a specialist in property law. He'll be handling the civil part of the case. This is Patricia Ruiz from the District Attorney's Elder Abuse Task Force, and this is Agent Ricardo Salazar from the DA's office. I was speechless. All this? Miss Ruiz, a woman in her mid-40s with a sharp gaze, extended her hand. Mrs. Croft, your case landed on my desk 2 days ago. I listened to the audio. I read the documents, and I'll be honest with you. In my 15 years doing this, I have rarely seen such a clear-cut case of premeditated financial exploitation. Your son and daughter-in-law didn't just commit fraud, they committed a federal crime. What's going to happen? I asked, my voice trembling. Agent Salazar, a burly man with a thick mustache, explained. At 11 o'clock, you will enter the attorney's office as planned. We will be outside, waiting. When they arrive and are all gathered, I will enter with the warrant. We're going to take them to the station to give their statements. There, they will be formally notified of the civil lawsuit and the criminal complaint. And the house? I asked, my heart pounding in my throat. Mr. Montoya smiled. We already have the injunction ready. As soon as the lawsuit is filed, the property is frozen. They can't sell it, mortgage it further, or make any transactions. And if we prove the fraud, which we will, the transfer will be nullified and the property will return to your name. How long will it take? Between 3 and 6 months, Mr. Cole answered. But Eleanor, I need you to understand something. As of today, your relationship with your son changes forever. There is no going back from this. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. My relationship with him changed the day he decided to sell me out for a bank loan. I'm just taking back what's mine. At 10:30, we left for the attorney's office. I was in my car, followed by a discreet vehicle carrying the lawyers and the agent. My cell phone rang. It was Ryan. We're almost there. We'll be on time. Me too. See you there. I parked in front of the notary's office, an old building downtown. My legs were shaking as I got out of the car. Mr. Cole approached and put a hand on my shoulder. Breathe. You can do this. Go in, say hello, act normal. When I come in, just step away and let us do our work. I nodded and went inside. The notary, a bald man with thick glasses, greeted me with a professional smile. Mrs. Croft, welcome. Your son has advised they are on their way. Would you like some coffee while you wait? No, thank you. I'm fine. I sat in one of the chairs in the waiting room. My hands were sweating. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the room could hear it. 5 minutes later, the door opened. Ryan entered first, dressed in a gray suit and blue tie. He looked confident, relaxed, almost happy. Behind him came Victoria, impeccable as always, in a black dress and heels that echoed on the marble floor. Hi, Mom, Ryan said, giving me a kiss on the cheek that felt like ice. Ready to finish this? Ready, I replied in a neutral voice. Victoria smiled at me. Eleanor, you look wonderful. That suit is beautiful on you. Hypocrite, I thought, but I smiled. Thank you, dear. We were shown into the notary's office. He already had the documents spread out on his mahogany desk. Papers and more papers with seals, signatures, and paragraphs in fine print. All right, the notary said, adjusting his glasses. Here we have Mrs. Croft's formal waiver of any rights of tenancy, habitation, or use of the property located at. He didn't finish the sentence. The door burst open, and in walked Mr. Cole, Miss Ruiz, Mr. Montoya, and Agent Salazar. The notary stood up, confused. What is the meaning of this? Agent Salazar showed his badge. District Attorney's Office. I have a warrant for Mr. Ryan Croft and Mrs. Victoria Croft. Ryan turned pale. Victoria jumped up from her chair, furious. What is this? Some kind of joke? Miss Ruiz stepped forward. It's no joke, ma'am. You are being summoned by the Elder Abuse Task Force. You are accused of fraud, financial exploitation, and abuse of trust. Ryan looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. Mom, what did you do? I stood up slowly. I looked him directly in the eyes, without blinking. What I should have done 6 months ago. Defend myself. This is ridiculous, Victoria shouted. She signed willingly. We have the papers. Mr. Cole pulled out a folder. Papers obtained through deceit, veiled threats, and emotional manipulation. We have recordings of your own voices, confessing the plan, calling her a burden, planning to lock her in a state facility. Would you like to listen to them here? Or would you prefer to do it at the station? The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria tried to speak, but Mr. Montoya interrupted her. Furthermore, we have requested and obtained an injunction. The property is frozen as of this moment. You cannot sell it, rent it, or make any transactions until the nullification lawsuit is resolved. You can't do this, Ryan yelled, his voice breaking. I am the legal owner. You are the owner of a property obtained illegally, Miss Ruiz replied coldly. And that's called theft. Now, are you coming voluntarily, or do I need to call for backup units? Ryan looked at me with a mixture of shock, anger, and something that almost looked like fear. Mom, you can't do this to me. I'm your son. I felt tears begin to form, but I held them back. Not here, not now. That's precisely why it hurts so much, Ryan. Because you are my son. And you still betrayed me. Victoria tried to approach me, but Agent Salazar stepped between us. Ma'am, please come with us. You can call your lawyer from the station. I watched them being led out. Ryan walked like a zombie, his head down. Victoria was shouting empty threats about lawsuits and expensive lawyers. When the door closed behind them, my legs gave out. Mr. Cole caught me before I fell. It's over, he whispered. The hardest part is over. But that wasn't true. The hardest part was just beginning. Because it's one thing to get a house back. It's another thing entirely to recover from the fact that your own blood wanted to leave you on the street. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of summonses, hearings, expert testimonies, and depositions. Every week, I had to show up at some government office to answer questions, sign documents, and ratify my testimony. Ryan and Victoria hired an expensive lawyer, the kind that charges $5,000 just for the initial consultation. A man in an Italian suit with a shark smile who tried to intimidate me every time we passed in the courthouse hallways. Ma'am, this can all be resolved without so much scandal, he'd say in a syrupy voice. Think about your son. Do you really want to ruin his life over a misunderstanding? I would look at him without blinking and reply, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a planned theft, and I didn't ruin his life. He ruined mine. During that time, I didn't speak to Ryan again. He tried to call me twice. He left voicemails that I never listened to completely. After that, I suppose his lawyer advised him not to contact me directly. Victoria, on the other hand, sent me a text at 3 a.m. one Tuesday. A single message filled with insults, threats, and words I never thought I'd read, written with so much venom. I saved it as evidence and gave it to Miss Ruiz. Perfect, she said with a satisfied smile. Witness intimidation. This just adds more charges. My textile studio kept running, but I wasn't the same. My employees noticed the change. They asked me if I was okay. I would smile and nod, but inside I felt like I was carrying stones in my chest. The nights were the worst. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, having nightmares where Ryan was a little boy again and I was losing him in a crowd. I'd dream I was looking for him, shouting his name, but he would never turn around. One afternoon, my friend Lucy, who had worked with me for years at the studio, made me a tea and sat across from me. "Eleanor, are you really going to go all the way to the end with this?" "What would you do?" I asked her, tired. "I don't know. But I know that boy is your only son, and that when all this is over, whether you win or lose, nothing will ever be the same between you." "Nothing is the same already, Lucy. That died the day he decided to see me as a burden instead of as his mother." She sighed and took my hand. "I just ask that you don't lose sight of who you are, because I've seen many times how anger turns us into the very thing we hate." Her words stayed with me for days. Finally, the day of the final hearing arrived, the day the judge would hear all the arguments, review all the evidence, and issue a ruling on the nullification of the transfer. It was a Wednesday in April. The sky was gray, threatening rain. I got up at 6 in the morning, dressed in a navy blue suit, and pulled my hair back into a flawless bun. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted the judge to see a serious woman, not a desperate victim. My lawyer picked me up at 8. "Ready?" he asked, studying my face. "As ready as I can be to watch my son sit in the defendant's chair." The courthouse was in the center of the city, an old building with high ceilings and hallways that smelled of old paper and disinfectant. We went up to the 3rd floor, where the courtroom was. Ryan and Victoria were already there, sitting with their lawyer. He wore a black suit, a gray tie, and looked gaunt. He had lost weight. He had deep dark circles under his eyes. Victoria, on the other hand, maintained her icy composure, wearing a pearl gray dress and her hair perfectly straight. When I walked in, Ryan looked up. Our eyes met for a second that felt eternal. I saw pain in his gaze, regret perhaps, or maybe just fear of the consequences. I looked away first. We were called into the courtroom. It was a rectangular space with cream-colored walls, a bench where the judge sat, and wooden pews for the parties. I sat with my lawyers. Ryan and Victoria sat on the other side, barely 10 feet away. The judge entered. He was a man in his 60s, with white hair and a penetrating gaze. He sat, arranged his papers, and spoke with a firm voice. "We are here to resolve the lawsuit for nullification of property transfer filed by Mrs. Eleanor Croft against her son, Ryan Croft, and her daughter-in-law, Victoria Croft. We will also address the criminal complaint for financial exploitation of the elderly. We will proceed with the presentation of evidence." Mr. Montoya stood up and began to present the case. He spoke for 20 minutes, explaining chronologically how I had been deceived, how they used my fear of losing my assets to manipulate me, how they applied for the home equity loan without my knowledge. Then came the hardest part, playing the audio. Victoria's voice filled the room. "We're almost rid of the problem. We're sending her to a state home, can you believe it? But at least we'll get our investment back." I watched Ryan close his eyes, clenching his fists on his legs. Then, the audio of his conversation with the real estate agent. "I need to get the current tenant out first." The defense lawyer tried to object, arguing the audio had been obtained without consent. But Miss Ruiz responded calmly. The audio was recorded by the victim herself during conversations in which she was present. It is completely legal under privacy laws when it involves documenting a crime. The judge nodded and allowed them to continue. Then it was my turn to testify. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked to the stand. I put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Mr. Montoya asked me basic questions first. My name, my age, my occupation, how I had acquired the property. "Mrs. Croft, can you describe in your own words what your son and daughter-in-law told you when they asked you to sign the transfer?" I took a deep breath. They told me it was to protect me. That if I died, Ryan would have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. They told me it was just a formality on paper, that I would keep living in my house just like always. They swore it to me. And you believed them? Yes. Because he was my son. Because I thought he would never, ever hurt me. When did you realize they had deceived you? Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but my voice remained steady. When my lawyer called to tell me I didn't own anything anymore, that they had mortgaged my house and were planning to kick me out to sell it. How did you feel in that moment? I looked directly at Ryan. He had his head down, avoiding my gaze. I felt like I was dying. I felt that 30 years of work, of sacrifice, of unconditional love had meant nothing to him. I felt that my only son had sold me for money. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Then it was the defense lawyer's turn to cross-examine me. He stood up with a severe expression. "Mrs. Croft, is it true that you signed the documents voluntarily in front of a notary?" "I signed what my son asked me to sign, trusting him." "Did you read the documents before signing?" The notary read them quickly. I trusted that my son wouldn't lie to me." "Ma'am, you are a 68-year-old woman, the owner of a successful business. Are you telling me you don't have the capacity to read a legal document before signing it?" I felt the anger rise in my throat. I have the capacity. What I didn't have was a reason to distrust my own son. "Isn't it true that you are putting on this whole show because you regretted your decision? That you now want to keep the house you voluntarily transferred?" "Objection," Mr. Montoya shouted. "He's harassing the witness." "Sustained," the judge said. "Counselor, rephrase your question." The defense lawyer changed tactics. "Mrs. Croft, did your son ever physically threaten you?" "No." "Did he hit you?" "No." "Did he lock you up against your will?" "No. But he manipulated me. He lied to me. And he planned to leave me on the street." "According to you." "According to interpretations of private conversations you recorded without consent." Miss Ruiz stood up. "Your Honor, again, we are dealing with arguments that have already been refuted. The recordings are legal, and the words in them are clear and unequivocal." The judge banged his gavel. "Sustained." "Counselor, do you have any more questions for the witness?" "No, Your Honor." I was allowed to step down. My legs barely held me. Next, a forensic psychologist who had evaluated my mental state testified. He confirmed I was completely lucid and had been the victim of systematic emotional manipulation. Then it was Ryan's turn. I watched him walk to the stand with slow steps. He looked small, vulnerable, nothing like the confident man who had walked into that attorney's office months ago believing he had won. "Mr. Croft," his own lawyer began, "can you explain what your intention was when you asked your mother to transfer the property?" Ryan spoke in a low voice. "I just wanted to protect her. I did research, and it's true that inheritance taxes are very high. I didn't want there to be problems later. At any point, did you plan to leave her on the street?" "No, never." Those conversations she recorded, they were taken out of context. I was angry, frustrated, but I never really planned to hurt her. "And the home equity loan?" Ryan hesitated. "We needed it for an investment project. It was going to generate income, and then I was going to give the house back to my mom." "Why didn't you explain that to her before applying for the loan?" Because I thought she would worry unnecessarily." Now it was Mr. Montoya's turn to cross-examine. "Mr. Croft, is it true that you told a real estate agent you needed to evict the current tenant, referring to your mother?" Ryan turned pale. Was that a yes or a no?" "Yes. But I didn't mean it." "Did you also not mean it when your wife said your mother was a burden and you didn't correct her?" "I couldn't control what Victoria said." "But you could have defended her. Did you?" Silence. "Mr. Croft, answer the question. Did you defend your mother when your wife called her a burden?" "No," Ryan whispered, and for the first time, a tear rolled down his cheek. "I didn't defend her." The judge called a 30-minute recess. I left the courtroom and leaned against the hallway wall, shaking. Mr. Cole offered me water. Lucy, who had come to support me, hugged me in silence. When we returned, the judge had his decision ready. After thoroughly reviewing the evidence presented, especially the audio recordings and testimonies, this court finds as follows. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hear. First, the transfer of property made by Mrs. Eleanor Croft to her son, Ryan Croft, is declared null and void, as it was carried out under deceit, manipulation, and material error induced by fraud. Second, the property is immediately restored to the name of its rightful owner, Mrs. Eleanor Croft. Third, the fraudulently obtained home equity loan remains the exclusive responsibility of Mr. Ryan Croft and Mrs. Victoria Croft, who must settle it without any liability to the property or to Mrs. Croft. Fourth, Mr. Ryan Croft and Mrs. Victoria Croft are ordered to pay $65,000 for moral damages and legal fees to Mrs. Eleanor Croft. Fifth, the file is turned over to the district attorney's office to determine whether to proceed with a criminal prosecution for the crimes of fraud and financial exploitation of the elderly. The gavel fell. Court is adjourned. The world seemed to stop. Ryan had his head in his hands. Victoria stared straight ahead, her eyes filled with tears of rage. I remained motionless, processing that I had won. I had gotten my house back, my dignity, my life. But as I looked at my son, shattered in that chair, his shoulders slumped and defeat written in every line of his face, I realized something devastating. I had won the battle, but I had lost my son forever. The days after the verdict were strange, silent, like waking up after a storm and not recognizing the landscape it left behind. I returned to my house, legally mine again, and walked through every room as if for the first time. I touched the walls. I sat on my sofa. I climbed the stairs slowly, feeling each step under my feet. Everything was the same. But I was no longer the same woman who had left here months ago. Mr. Cole helped me with all the paperwork to register the property in my name again. The bank, after a tense negotiation, agreed that Ryan and Victoria were solely responsible for the home equity loan. My house was free and clear. The $65,000 from the settlement arrived in my account 3 weeks later. It was a considerable sum, but it felt empty, as if no amount of money could compensate for what I had truly lost. One afternoon in May, while I was stitching in my studio, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Mom?" Ryan's voice cut through me like a knife. I didn't respond immediately. I just listened to his ragged breathing on the other end. "Mom, I know I have no right to call you. I know I ruined everything. But I need you to know something." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone to my ear. "Victoria and I are getting divorced," he continued, his voice breaking. She left me when we lost the case. She said I was useless, that I had ruined the best plan we had, that I was weak for not being harder on you. I felt a lump in my throat, but I didn't speak. And she was right, Mom. I was weak, but not in the way she thought. I was weak because I let her control me, because I allowed her to convince me that you were a burden, because I forgot who you really are. Tears began to roll down my cheeks silently. "I lost my job," he continued. "The company found out about the lawsuit and fired me. They said I was a reputational risk. I'm living in a small apartment I rented with the little I had left. And every day, I wake up thinking about how I could betray you like that. Ryan." "No." I finally spoke, my voice hoarse. "Let me finish, please. I need to tell you this, even if you never want to hear from me again. Mom, I spent 32 years of my life watching you get up every day before dawn. I saw you sew until your fingers bled. I saw you cry for my dad and still keep going. I saw you build a business from nothing. And instead of honoring that legacy, instead of protecting you like you protected me my whole life, I stabbed you in the back." His voice broke completely. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I hate myself for what I did, and that if I could go back in time, I would give everything I have to never have signed for that damned loan, to have defended you when Victoria insulted you, to have been the son you deserved instead of the monster I became." The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with years of love, pain, betrayal, and regret. "Ryan," I said finally, wiping my tears, "I'm going to tell you something you need to hear. And after this, it's up to you what you decide to do with your life. Tell me, forgiveness isn't something that's given just because someone asks for it. It's given when the person who was hurt is ready to let go of the weight of the grudge. And I'm not ready yet." I heard him sob on the other end. "What you did to me was unforgivable. You took away my peace. You took away my trust. You made me doubt my own judgment. And above all, you made me feel like I was worthless to you. Mom, But, I continued, but you are my son. And even if I wanted to hate you, even if I wanted to erase you from my life like you tried to erase me from yours, I can't. Because a mother's love doesn't just turn off like that, Ryan. It's like those embers that keep glowing under the ash, even when everything seems dead. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not going to pretend nothing happened. We're not going to go back to being what we were, because that doesn't exist anymore. But I'm not going to close the door on you forever either. Are you giving me a chance? I'm telling you that forgiveness is earned, Ryan. Not with words, not with tears. It's earned with actions, with time. By showing me that you understood the lesson, that you've grown, that you've become a real man, not the puppet of a manipulative woman. How? How do I show you? That's something you have to figure out for yourself. But I'll give you some advice. Start by rebuilding yourself. Get a job, pay your debts, learn to live with the consequences of your decisions, and above all, learn to look at yourself in the mirror without feeling disgusted. There was a long pause. And if I do, if I really change, will there be space for me in your life again? Maybe, I answered honestly. Or maybe not. That will depend on a lot of things. But for now, what I need is space, distance, time to heal what you two broke. I understand, he said in a small voice. And Mom, even if it doesn't mean much, I love you. I've always loved you. I just lost sight of what really mattered. I love you too, Ryan. That's why it hurts so much. I hung up before I fell apart completely. The months passed. Summer arrived with its suffocating heat. My studio started getting more orders. A boutique in Asheville, North Carolina, placed an order for 50 hand-stitched table runners. The work kept me busy, and that was a good thing. I didn't have time to sink into the pain. One afternoon in August, Lucy came into the studio with a serious expression. Eleanor, there's a woman outside who wants to talk to you. She says her name is Gabriella and that her story is similar to yours. I went out and found a woman in her 70s, her face lined with wrinkles and her eyes full of sadness. Mrs. Croft? My name is Gabriela Ramirez. I saw your case on the news and I'm going through something similar with my daughter and my son-in-law. They're pressuring me to sign my apartment over to them. They say it's for protection, but after seeing what happened to you, I'm scared. I had her come in. I made her a coffee, and I listened to her story. It was almost identical to mine. The same words, the same promises, the same manipulation disguised as love. What can I do? She asked me, her voice trembling. I don't want to lose my home, but I don't want to lose my daughter either. I gave her Gregory Cole's contact information. I explained the steps she needed to take, and I told her something she needed to hear. Gabriella, protecting your assets isn't a betrayal of your children. It's an act of self-love. And if they truly love you, they will understand. She left with a spark of hope in her eyes. I couldn't sleep that night. I thought about how many women like Gabriella and me there were, how many mothers being manipulated, how many children taking advantage of the blind trust of those who gave them life. The next morning, I called Gregory. Gregory, I want to do something. I want to use part of the settlement money to create something useful. What do you have in mind? An association. Small, nothing too ambitious, but one that offers free legal advice to seniors who are victims of financial abuse. That teaches them to identify the warning signs. That gives them the tools to defend themselves. There was a silence. Then, Eleanor, that is. That's brilliant. And I know 3 other lawyers who would be willing to donate a few hours a month for something like that. And so, Silver Dignity was born, a small nonprofit organization we registered in September. With $20,000 from my settlement, we rented a small office. 2 days a week, we offered free consultations. The first week, 3 people came. The second, 8. Within a month, we had a waiting list. Every story I heard was like looking into a mirror of my own pain, but it was also a chance to stop others from going through the same thing. In addition to the legal advice, I started giving free embroidery workshops on Saturdays, not just to teach the craft, but to create a community, a space where older women could feel valued, useful, alive. One of my students, Carmela, who was 73, told me something I'll never forget. Mrs. Eleanor, I don't just come here for the embroidery. I come because after my children abandoned me in a nursing home, I thought my life was over. But you taught me that there is still beauty to create. There is still purpose. In November, 6 months after the verdict, I received a certified letter. It was from Ryan. With trembling hands, I opened it. Mom, I don't expect a reply to this letter. I just want you to know that I got a job at a construction company. It's a modest position, well below what I used to earn. But it's honest. I'm paying off the loan that ruined everything, little by little. It's going to take me years to pay it off, but I'm going to do it. I also started therapy. The therapist has helped me understand how I allowed Victoria to manipulate me, how I confused love with an obsession for appearing successful, how I betrayed the values you taught me. Every week, I deposit $100 into a savings account. I don't know what for exactly. Maybe one day I can pay you back even a tiny part of what you gave me your whole life. Or maybe it's just my way of reminding myself that valuable things are built with patience. They aren't stolen. I saw your association online. I read about the workshops, and I was so proud, because despite all the damage I caused you, you kept being who you've always been. A woman who turns pain into something beautiful. I'm not asking for forgiveness again. I just want you to know that I'm trying to be better. Day by day, step by step. And if one day, when you feel your heart is ready, you'd like to get a coffee with me, I'll be waiting. With love and eternal shame, your son, Ryan. I folded the letter slowly. Tears were rolling down my cheeks, but this time, they weren't just tears of pain. There was something else, something that felt like hope. I didn't answer him right away, but I kept the letter in my dresser drawer, next to the old photographs and Arthur's silver earrings. Because forgiveness, as I had told Ryan, doesn't arrive in one day. It arrives in small doses, in unexpected moments. In the conscious decision to let go of 1 gram of resentment each time the weight becomes unbearable. Today, 1 year after that verdict, I'm still living in my house. I'm still stitching. I'm still giving workshops. I'm still helping people who need to get their dignity back. Ryan and I have had coffee 3 times. Awkward conversations at first, where he talks about his job and I talk about my association, where we avoid mentioning Victoria or the trial, where we are building, clumsily, something new on the ruins of what we were. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we used to. Probably not. But maybe we can build something different, something more honest, something based on mutual respect and not on blind dependence. Because I learned something fundamental in this painful process. True love isn't blind. True love lets you see clearly and still choose to stay. But it also lets you see clearly when it's time to protect yourself. Respect is not optional. It is not negotiated. It is not begged for. And your dignity is not for sale, no matter who the buyer is. I'm sitting on my terrace this evening, a cup of coffee in my hands, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. The same sky I looked at when I was broken. The same sky that watched me get back up. And I think of all the women who are, right now, going through what I went through, who feel like they're alone, who believe they have no power. And I want to tell them this, from the bottom of my soul. You are never too old to defend what is yours. It is never too late to get your dignity back. And true wealth isn't in the properties you own, but in the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize the woman you are. A woman who gets up, who fights, who survives, and who, despite everything, is still capable of love. But now, with her eyes wide open, Finn, if this story touched something inside of you, if you know someone who is living through a similar situation, or if you simply want to remember that it's never too late to reclaim your power, leave me a comment telling me where you're watching from. Write your country, your city, because stories like this know no borders, and maybe your comment is the push someone else needs to defend themselves. Give this a like if you believe that respect for our elders must be unbreakable. And subscribe to keep joining me in these real-life confessions that remind us how strong we can be when we decide not to give up. Because the real victory isn't in destroying the one who hurt you. It's in rebuilding yourself and showing that no betrayal can extinguish the light you carry inside. Thanks for staying until the end. Until the next story.